Moana 2. I've been talking about making this video for a little bit, but I've been avoiding it because every time I saw somebody online talking about the newest Moana movie, it seemed very disappointing. So I held off on it because there were a few other things that I wanted to take care of, and I still have to take care of them, but I'm hoping this can be a quick edit. I've noticed that doing movie reviews tend to be a little bit quicker. Wicked was just a whole undertaking of its own. So I think the best place to begin with Moana was the release of the first movie, November 23rd, 2016. I'm going to talk a little bit about where I was at this time in November of 2016. I was with my ex, who I thought I would eventually marry. I did not. She's my ex. And my lease was up that December, but I had just lost my job. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to renew the lease. So I kind of was packing everything up, getting everything ready. And my ex had this tendency to talk me into really bad ideas and make them sound logical. So with my tax check that I got about a month and a half later, we went out west. She was like, hey, Seattle's nice. We both like Seattle. Let's go to Seattle. So I was like, okay, I mean, I'm about to be homeless and I'd rather be homeless over there. Whatever. So I was a little irresponsible because this was back in the day where we actually got something out of our tax checks. And I did spend a good chunk of money on like saying goodbye to everybody, and I thought I had budgeted it out, but the way I was thinking was, we're gonna be homeless, like might as well enjoy what little we have. So anyway, we started driving out west and we got to Billings, Montana, when I realized, shit, we have like $40 and we need to fill up on gas. And we stopped like 30 minutes east of Billings and looked up at the sky, and it was the first and only time I have ever been able to see the Milky Way. I don't know if this light is reflecting off my glasses, so I don't really want to take the chance. So it was actually really nice, pretty. Billings, Montana is the largest city in Montana, and it's still very small, but it lies in a, what would you call that? Like a valley, basically, and it's surrounded by mountains. So the light pollution of that city was very contained, and it was very gorgeous. There's a lot of nothing out there, a lot of reservations, a lot of nothing. So we get close to there, and I guess I got really lucky. I know I got really lucky because I had a high school friend that had actually moved out to Montana. So I had the idea, I think that this is where she said she moved to, so let's try. Let's just see. We need to sleep. We were driving for like 3 days straight. Turns out she was in the city. We crashed there, and we were only there for, I always say 3 months, but it wasn't quite that long. Basically, it was that friend that I had in high school, a friend of hers who owned the house. She was like the landlord, but inherited the house from family. And then the other roommate who was scheduled to move in right when I showed up out of nowhere, so I can understand the disdain. But we were in the basement on a mattress on the floor, so it's not like we were taking up a lot of space. And I did a lot of chores and cleaning, but they were very quick to stop appreciating that. Trust me, like, I was cleaning. I think that my ex was actually instigating situations with the roommates, but I don't know. All that I know is that there was a lot of unrest, and I just wanted everybody to get along because, like, come on, we're in a very dire situation. We just need to keep our head up. So after maybe a month of being there, I got a job working 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., and I was getting started. It took 3 weeks to get my first check because that's usually how it works. And Moana is relevant, by the way. This is also relevant. This is super relevant. So the day before I get my first check at the job, which was like a big check because it was my first 3 weeks of work, however that worked. It was a lot of work that I was getting paid for, and it was the most I was getting paid at the time in 2016. And I was like, yes, I can finally like pay them back. They've helped me crash here. I can pay them back, and then I can start getting serious about like finishing going to the West Coast and then like getting a job as soon as we get there, because it was just Taco Bell. So I was thinking maybe I could get transferred in Seattle itself. I don't know. I always try to think that there are so many solutions when there are not. But how did Moana play into this. Okay, so Moana was released November. So it was released in November. Like I said, I was like packing up, getting ready to leave, blah, 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 blah. We get there around January-ish, and this roommate who was scheduled to move in like the day that we showed up, it was not intentional. It was just it just happened. She had gotten Moana as a Christmas present, and she was obsessed. And we were all around the same age. Like, I think I was around 23 at that time. Yeah, 22, 23, around that time. And we were all around the same age. Like, she wasn't more than a couple years younger than me, and she was obsessed. And for 3 weeks straight, she played Moana. And my first time watching it, I hadn't really heard it a lot. It didn't take me long to watch it because she actually did end up inviting me to watch it when everything was still cool and wonderful. I remember being underwhelmed. I don't know if it's because it already had a bad taste in my mouth because she had already been playing it so much, even though it wasn't a lot at that time, or if it's because it was really actually kind of boring. I don't know. I think the colors and the animation were really cool in Moana, but I think that the storyline was kind of boring, and that's going to be ironic later, but I don't remember it making a very big impression on me, and in the end it caused a lot of frustration because with me working 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. I had to sleep during the day, and it was one day, it was around 2 or 3 p.m. I really needed to sleep because I was only going to get a few hours before I had to wake up and do a really long shift. So I'm just starting to, finally drift off. I'm finally starting to get somewhere. And then I just hear Moana getting blared from upstairs because the TV was like right above where we were sleeping. And like I sent a text and I was like, hey, could you turn it down? I'm trying to sleep, just being really nice and cordial, because at this point I didn't realize that there was like really an issue. I think that there had been some signs, but I had been really cordial and respectful. So, it never makes sense when it happens, but looking back, it always does make sense. She decides to turn it up even more. So of course I get mad and I go upstairs and I'm like, look, what's going on? Like, I need to sleep. I need to make money. What's going on? I don't even know. I don't know how that conversation went. I just remember being really tempted to just like unplug the TV because I needed to go to sleep. Like, this wasn't a joke. I was trying to, pay my way and then get out of the house. But that just wasn't an issue, and then the landlord took her side. And like I said, to this day, I kind of think that maybe my ex meddled more than I thought I did. And I think she was being dishonest because she was letting on that, like, she was getting bullied. And maybe that was the case, and they just really didn't like our presence. I don't know. She was a shitty person anyway, so I would not be surprised to learn anything. So that is my memory of Moana. I heard it every day for at least 3 weeks. Every single day. It lost me my job and it lost me that house, and I ended up taking my first paycheck, which was a meaty paycheck, to go all the way back home because I was done with it. I was like, yeah, sure, I don't want to be homeless in my hometown, but it has more resources for me than somewhere else. So sadly, that's just kind of how it works out when I try to leave places, but we'll get there eventually. It's been it's been a lot. So that's what I think of when I think of Moana. I think it's overhyped. I think the songs were all mid in the first Moana. I didn't really get very excited. I thought that the idea that all of her loved ones are always going to be with her was kind of boring. It kind of takes away from the value of life to a point. I know that's a big thing to say. I can't necessarily back that up, okay? So there were a lot of things about the original Moana where it was like, I can see where this can be endearing, but it's not for me. The message isn't like super spectacular. It's empowering, but it's not the type of empowerment that I can resonate with, and etc, etc, etc. So that was my thoughts on that, on the original Moana. I thought that the glow effects in the first Moana and the crab dude, I know he has a name, I don't care. I was never super interested in Moana, I'm sorry. It's really cool and pretty and stuff, but, I don't think there were enough dynamics. I don't think that there were enough challenges. There were, it's just, I don't know. It was okay, And before we segue into actually watching the video, as always, I find it important to remind everybody that this is a film made for children. So not to have too high expectations. My thought going into this, my expectation was that I would be pleasantly surprised. And not to spoil too much, but I think it kind of hit the mark on that. There were a lot of things that I didn't know as far as people's issues with Moana 2, and we'll get to that at the end. I'm going to tag that all at the end because I didn't pay attention to what anybody was saying about Moana 2 because I wanted to be in my own little bubble. So when I made this video, I could try to be really rational and level-headed because with what I've noticed with the YouTubers I've watched complaining about Moana 2, it definitely seems like they are in their own bubbles where, we'll talk about that later. The glasses actually aren't too bad, but I only have 20 minutes to record the rest of what I need, which I don't think I'll be able to accomplish. Let's try it. From what little tiny bit I did retain from what I saw online as far as discussions with Moana, revolved around it being disappointed, a sellout, a jumbled mess, a poorly paced disaster. So my theory going into watching this movie was that they wanted to establish all of this lore in Moana so that whenever they make the live action, they will have more to expand on. And I think that was what it boiled down to. I don't have facts or evidence. We'll get to all the nitty gritty about the production and everything at the end instead of the beginning like I did with Wicked, because I don't think it's as important because we need to focus on the end result because everything that we have been consuming is messed up in one way or another, and we need to appropriately hold people accountable rather than Moana sucks and then just being okay with live action Mufasa. Priorities. So the movie begins with Moana climbing in a somewhat distant island. She has her little animals with her, the chicken and the pig. The pig falls, she falls after the pig, and then they discover a piece of pottery from a tribe that isn't theirs. The animation is really pretty. I heard that the animation was outsourced and that it was cheaper to make. I didn't really notice a dip in any way. I thought the facial expressions were really good. I thought the way that the characters interacted with each other were good. I mean, it's Disney, you know, like the first song was very boring. It gives the first Moana. I do admit Moana is a very pretty character. I love looking at her character design. She just feels very fluid. I love the way she looks, but animation does have that look to it. And again, it's Disney. What do I have to sing praises that have been sang for decades, centuries even? To counter what everybody else has been saying that this plot is very boring and blah blah blah, I actually really enjoy the plot. It's very simple. All Moana wants to do is find other people, and that's it. And that's okay. I think it's okay to have simple ambitions, especially it wasn't simple ambitions at the end of the day, but to start it off, it was a realistic goal. It was something to work towards. It was something that she cared about. And I thought that that was a very good plot line to have. So we cut to Maui, who's talking to some demigod that we don't get to see early on. And he's talking about opening the oceans back up. And this demigod is like, no, you can't do that. And he's all trapped and he refuses to call on Moana. And that's setting that up, I guess. We go back to Moana and her people where they're having a celebration. I'll admit the dancing was cute, a little jarring at times, but it's cute, I guess. I'll give them that. I do want to note that it's really nice that Moana was able to get everything that she dreamed of and that she worked forward. I think it's good to have situations like that where we can just kind of feel happy and at peace, which is probably why people related so much with the first Moana. There's such a strong bond with the tribe and how they treat each other that it's very nice. It's very endearing. No matter what, everybody supports her 100%. All of them, a bunch of ride or dies. When they go to initiate her with the special Wayfinder title, whatever it is, ritual that they are doing, it starts to get kind of weird. And when I was watching it, I was like, ooh, is this actually happening? Is everybody seeing an illusion? But my main thought was it's probably some kind of prophetic vision, and I was right, that's what it was. So she has this prophetic vision of following a star and going to do the thing. So she's handed the answers, which I can see why some people wouldn't like, but also you kind of need to know where to start. And it works, I guess. Oh, and then I realized that it's a comet, not a star. Up to this point, I was about 20 minutes into the film, and I was like, why don't people like this? Why aren't they vibing? What's going on? Because so far, I thought that it was good. The pacing was good so far. It was very nice, very quaint. It wasn't bad. It was pretty to look at. That's always a big thing with animation for me. If it's pretty to look at, I will watch it. Even if your plot's kind of whack. If it's pretty, woo. The second song, when she is about to leave, was actually pretty good. I enjoyed it, and it segued into her saying goodbye. So when in her song she says, "Will I leave without saying goodbye?" No, it will take a whole 7 minutes for you to say goodbye to everybody. Moana, I am so happy I got to sit there and watch it. That was the first time it really started to drag. I think it was kind of the only time where it was just dragging, was she went and said bye to everybody they had. Well, hold on, I have stuff written down. Yeah, they just really milked her departure. It went too long. She talked to too many people. But at the end of the day, it was really nice to see the people supporting their people. It was very nice to see. I'm going to say that quite a few times. It just felt nice. It felt nice. The sense of community and love and support was just emanating. And then we get to see the antagonist the second time, where we see her shadow, but we don't get to see her. I just know her shadow looks cool, so we'll get there when we get there. Also, she takes the advisement of somebody, I can't remember at this point, to make a crew, and I thought this was a bad idea from the start, and I still think she could have done without a crew. However, after they get going and their idiocy really starts to show, idiocy, when they're idiocy, that's smart people shit right there. She slaps them into shape through song. A boring song. Also, the "Ocean's Our Friend" was kind of creepy, I'm not gonna lie. The song ends short, except this guy finishes it, which, thank you for that, actually. But the song stops short because the comet suddenly explodes, and they're like, whoa, hold up, that's not supposed to happen. It leads them straight to the coconut pirates, and they're like, oh boy, not these guys again. And then they start attacking, and then all of a sudden, there's a giant clam with multiple eyes that I didn't think it was a clam at first, and then one of the coconut ships got sucked in, and then suddenly they realized that the coconuts wanted to work together with them, because they also needed to go where they were going, which was cool and whatever, but then they got sucked into the clam. So all of that happened very fast. I didn't know what was happening, and I actually didn't really type anything down during this time, because I was just like, what is happening? Very quick, very dramatic. A lot of pacings like this I kind of prefer. I like whenever a lot of things happen fast, because I don't like idling in animation, because first of all, it's so expensive to produce, and also the point of using animation, one of the points of using animation is to utilize methods individual to animations that allow you to tell stories quicker, more efficiently, with more subtler ways than going full out and doing an entire scene. Anybody who writes knows that the subtleties that you can slip into the everyday conversation can add the subtext that would make things too wordy and long and boring otherwise. So I always like it when things go real fast. I also have ADHD, so I don't like to linger, and Moana, just the first one, felt like there was a lot of lingering, and I was like, I want to go. I want to find my way away. But that part with the clam opening made me gasp. I was like, whoa, what is that? I also want to make a note that for some reason the coconuts, when they were talking, reminded me of that Neopets game. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna try to find an image if I can. I'm sorry. So anyway, they get swallowed by the clam, and conveniently Maui is already down there. That's actually where he was getting held captive. So at this point I thought, well, why didn't he just call Moana, and why didn't they just skip all of the accidental stuff and just have Moana go to Maui first instead of following a comet? And that's all going to make sense later once I saw what people were saying about it. But it is okay, and it is what it is. They find Maui, but Moana gets split up, so it's everybody plus Maui minus Moana, who is now with the antagonist, which we now get to see. She looks very cool. I like her design. I love her voice. Very beautiful singing voice. And she sings her little song. It's very nice. And of course, I was thinking, oh, well, she's going to deceive us. She's actually going to sabotage what we're doing, right? No, it actually seems like what she's saying about being trapped, and if you break the curse, that maybe things will change, was actually genuine, and I am okay with that. I have no qualms exploring new archetypes that we don't think are worthy of putting in media. Yeah, she's not a big baddie, but like, villains don't have to be. And I do understand that a lot of time lately has been spent leaning into the idea of generational traumas or generational greed and cruelty, where the bad guy is more of just like some vague figurehead, and or it's your family itself, whatever, and it's a good lesson to have. But I can understand why people want something a little more exciting when it's Disney. But it wasn't bad. She wasn't bad. Her design was really neat, and I think having decent intentions were okay. It made sense knowing that she was just scared of getting literally killed by lightning and decided to not do the right thing because of that, and that's okay. That she's still a villain, because you could have done more, maybe. I don't know. If they're demigods, who knows? Who cares? I don't know. Whatever. Let's move on. Again, the glow effects were back in full effect for this movie, which, again, I really like the glow effects. I really do. I'm not going to sit here and tell them that they shouldn't keep using glow effects, because they look gorgeous. So keep doing it. If it works for your franchise and you're still making your franchise, make it glow. You're not going to shine if you don't glow. Hello, and I'm back. I know it might seem like I didn't leave, but I sure as shit doodles did. A lot of people mentioned that one of the funny parts was the chicken scream, and I'll agree, it was very entertaining. The theater did laugh.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So, a little bit of exposition is laid down. The god put the island at the bottom of the sea in order to split up the regions of the sea, and it needs to be touched by a human in order to be raised. Subtext. So Moana was able to break this seal or open this door or whatever, and she ended up in a different part of the sea, I guess. In this part of the sea, the ocean cannot reach her, so she cannot have the assistance of her oceanic friend. So it is her with her crew, the chicken, the pig, Maui, and his tattoo. As always, there was a lot of fourth wall breaking. Like when Maui called her a princess, and she said, "I'm still not a princess." And he said, "Well, a lot of people think you are." Fourth wall. It was alright, I guess. There were a lot of moments like that where it's like, it's alright, I guess. But, I mean, The Rock's having fun. That's what matters, right? The Maui song was pretty decent. He was a pretty good hype man. I liked how it was less of "you're welcome" and more of like, "I got you" type vibe. Maybe that was just me. I don't know. That's what I got out of it. I liked it more than his first song. Make sure that this is stored. So they all get back on the boat and they start sailing, and immediately there's this giant multi-system storm coming straight for them. It looks impossible. Oh my goodness, egods, how will we ever? But you see, they have a wayfinder and they got a demigod. That's two things and a bunch of animals. They have a lot of animals and a coconut now, so they got this. I will admit, when he called the pig and the chicken bacon and eggs, that was funny. That made the audience laugh. So the plan is that the god is to focus on the humans, so hypothetically Maui can go in as a demigod, lift up the island, and then have Moana touch it. So that's like the plan. That's what they go for. Maui gets a pretty good head start, but then he gets struck down, and it was so dramatic, and he lost his tattoos. I actually felt bad. Like, the cinematography really pulled you in for this scene, and I was like, oh man, not his tattoos. So, it had me pulled in. And then Moana gets the idea, there's another way, which I think it's really cool how somebody who everybody thought was going to be a villain actually spoke some words of wisdom for Moana that she was able to hold on to until the end, that helped her create the final decision. And of course, she just barely gets struck down by the lightning, but the cinematography of that shot was really pretty. And I've heard a lot of people complain about the animation, but honestly, like, moments like that was gut-wrenching. Like, I felt really bad. The music was swelling. It was all very well done. Like, it helped. It was easy to emotionally connect to that, especially as somebody who doesn't give a rat's ass about Moana. I think that's a cool thing to be able to do. So she dies, but it turns out she's not dead, but she touched it in time, so she restored everything, and the ocean's back, and the ancestors come back and they talk to her, and that was kind of sweet. Again, the whole nod to everybody you love never dies. So even when she loses people, it's not like she really loses people, but it's nice because in moments like this, she has that to kind of, come back to life or whatever. Just the whole thing when Maui was just mourning for her, it was all very tense and touching. Also, I noticed that men were talking during the sad part, and I can't help but to wonder why men must talk during the sad part. In their defense, I think there were some children, but I mean, it happens. It's whatever. It's fine. It's whatever. Pretty much my take on Moana dying, but not really, was that it was done well. I mean, we didn't really expect her to die anyway, so we knew that some kind of magic mojo was going to happen, and it did. Predictable, but not in a bad way, in my opinion. It's just so sweet to me that she's always surrounded by her loved ones, and that she always has the support of her ancestors, and it's a very nice message to have. It's a very uncommon message to put out there, but the care and compassion for each other is there, and it's a good message to have. I don't think it's the worst message we've seen in an animated movie recently. We've seen some crap. So anyway, Maui gets his tats back. Together still, just a little different. So do we not get to see the angry god is something I wrote down. I guess not. But I'm kind of disappointed, but I'm kind of not. Each world kind of has the lore that it's built upon, and if it makes sense within the world itself, then why not? It's not like it was illogical to not show that god, so I'm not bent on it. And then when she says, "We will rise," and blows the horn, that was actually pretty good. The way that the animation went into the horn blow, and then just how dramatic it was in the animation, I liked that. And I did think that it was very sweet that people started coming in. I know some people jabbed at the logic of it, I guess they had just happened to be on the ocean, but I think realistically what happened was, since all the borders were released, the islands were actually much closer than what they were before. When they noticed the shift and they could see other islands in the distance, I would imagine they'd be able to see that island that they released from the depths, because it seems like that island was kind of like the center point for all of the other islands, but it was put down for a reason. So my thinking is that they probably saw those mountains rise and they were like, "Guys, we gotta go, what's going on?" And the first time she blows her horn, they don't even hear her. It's not until the second horn from the frickin' chicken when they start coming. So it's not illogical, and I think it's very sweet how her whole goal was to unite people, and then she did that. I like this movie better than I liked the first. I thought the first movie had boring songs. I thought it was slow paced. It seemed like it was a movie designed for Moana and The Walk, and The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, to just kind of carry on their shoulders, because they pretty much are the only speaking characters for the most part up until this movie. So what did the criticism look like? I didn't watch a lot, and I did a lot of skimming, but here are kind of the points that I was able to gather. I think the biggest criticism that I didn't catch on to was that Moana 2 was actually supposed to be a TV series on Disney. This being said, the story was already written out to be adapted in a multi-episode story. Most people who are into animation knew this going into Moana, and I think it helped to ruin their perspective of the movie. And I can understand. It's why I avoid listening to what people are saying about movies if I plan on talking about it with my raw impression, my thoughts, my opinions, without it being affected by others. Because I think it is very important to get individuals' takes without leaning too heavily in others. I'll admit, with a lot of horror movies and stuff, if I watch a YouTuber talk about it, that's it. I've watched the movie. I'm probably bored of it. So your initial impression is always very, very, very important, and I think oftentimes taken for granted. So I did not know that it was supposed to be a series. So now the pacing kind of makes sense, because a couple of the spots felt kind of slow, and there were a couple of things that I felt could have been avoided entirely. And I've seen videos talk about how if you look at it from an episodic point of view, you can see how it can kind of be chopped up into 3 parts, and you can tell where an episode would be, etc. Maybe if I rewatched it with that in mind, maybe I could see what they were talking about. I do kind of, I guess, see where they were talking about, but I'd have to rewatch it. I don't know. It's not a gripe of mine. I didn't know any of that coming into this, so So be it. It didn't affect me. I thought that the storytelling was perfectly fine. I think it was better than the first. I think it was more interesting, and I like it when things go faster. What can I say? And when you're dealing with kids these days, they need it to be faster, okay? They're not going to sit still. So the fact that I found Moana 2 so engaging after finding the first film so underwhelming is a little token, I suppose, of hope that all of us see things differently, and that sometimes things that are not made for us can be made for others. Again, I like how the villain isn't really a villain. There were gripes with that there's no spectacular show of a villain, but sometimes having people who are just down on their luck and tired of life and afraid of the consequences of stepping out of line are perfectly acceptable villains. And again, I know we've had a long string of very mundane villains, but I don't quite think she's on that level of mundane. I think it is okay to see people who are too weak to break out of a system as antagonists, but she helped them, and I don't know. I think it's always going to be important to explore archetypes that haven't been explored yet, especially whenever it comes to villains or antagonists or people that just try to get in others' way, because there are so many reasons for people to turn on each other that we just kind of have to explore all the possibilities. Again, it could have been more. It definitely could have been more, but yeah, I'm fine with it. And again, people kept mentioning, like, I guess the animation was lackluster compared to the first film. And again, it's been so long since I've watched it. I don't remember. But all I know from watching Moana 2 is that it was very fluid. It was very pretty. I didn't care about the water, but I usually don't think water is very special. I just really honed in on those facial expressions, especially the way that she interacted with her sister was so fluid. And it felt like there was so much weight there. And it was just very well done. You have to be sure to praise animation when it does well, because if all we do is attack animation, they're going to get rid of animation. I highly recommend to anybody who wants to be super negative about animations like this, take that energy and focus on these live fucking action remake animosities. I still am not over Pinocchio. I mention it every time. The way the physics didn't work in Pinocchio is unforgettable. I think about that sometimes and I'm like, I cannot believe Disney has the resources that they have and this is what they're doing. Anyway, I digress. There was also another complaint about how this movie relies heavily on non-speaking characters. Bruh. The whole plot is that they can't find any other humans. They had a whole crew. Yeah, sure, Maui's tattoo is technically a character, but it's quirky. It's like the devil on your shoulder. It's a part of his personality. Ooh, the ocean. I mean, sure, but that was already established in the first one, so why would they get rid of that? Ooh, the chicken and the pig. I agree. They should have left them behind. Why couldn't they just leave the chicken and the pig behind? But she took them everywhere before the adventure, so whatever. Whatever. The crew's alright. It's decent. I wish she didn't have a crew, and even if she did, why not just leave the animals? Like, it's whatever. It is what it is. It could be worse. I'm no Moana fan, okay? I'm trying to be realistic here. Please. The songs were really on the same level as the first one. There were a couple that stuck out, but then the others were just kind of like meh, you know? For some reason, after I finished the movie, all that I could hear was the first song from the first movie, in the wind, in the mud, I don't know. I don't remember. But for some reason, that's been stuck in my head since I watched this movie, and that song isn't even in this movie, and I haven't heard that song in a very long time. I don't usually hear that song, so where's that coming from? My assumption is that there was a song that she sang in a similar key, and I think it might have been that first song that she sang, which I thought was like a meh song, so maybe it sounded so similar that now the song stuck in my head isn't even from the movie that I watched. That's weird. I'm sure there's some kind of psychology behind that Disney would love to have. So that's about it. I went into this expecting a pleasant surprise, and a pleasant surprise is what I got. I've noticed that trend recently, like how I went into Wicked with high expectations with a seed of disappointment, and that's exactly what came from Wicked. So I do understand that the biases we go into with films are biases and almost inescapable, but once again, I just implore everybody, focus on the good things that are being done and make it very clear that we don't want any weird stuff anymore. Like this Simba movie that's a musical, I'm gonna have to watch it because I keep complaining about it and I haven't seen it. I don't even know if it's bad. It might be good. I don't know. I just have so much disdain because Disney revolutionized the animation sphere, mostly because they had the money for it. But either way, it's what they were known for, and for them to just backpedal and to focus on these 30 years of films that they made and just do that and nothing else and not try to animate, sucking themselves into CGI, doing things wrong, poorly, the same way that everybody else is doing. Why we need to complain a lot louder about that. So I'm going to watch the Simba movie at Mufasa. I've been calling it the Simba movie. I'm going to watch the Mufasa movie at some point. And I'm going to let you guys know what I think, because I never made a video on Pinocchio. I think I started to like 2 years ago, and I just never finished it. It hurt me to make the video on that movie, okay? So anyway, if I do go into the Mufasa movie, my expectations will be low, and my review will probably be to match. I also have another video that I haven't mentioned because I haven't recorded it yet, but I'm going to watch this little thing called a lost documentary that was released in 2022. I don't actually know what it was called. I don't remember right now. I'll put it on the screen. And I will be watching that and I will be reacting to it because Lost, the TV show, is actually very close to my life. Growing up as a kid, I think I was 12 when it was released, and I was obsessed until the end, okay? Episode 1 to the final episode, I was ride or die with that show. And Billiam has created a massive multi-part series on deep diving into Lost, and that is all good and fun, but I'm not going to do all that. However, I did see that there was a Lost documentary, and I think it would be really cool to react to what they're talking about. I watched about 10 minutes, and I was like, oh, I remember these times, and there's just so much I want to talk about, because being a fan of Lost was a really big part of my childhood. So let's talk about Lost. We can talk about Charlie Bowen. There were so many things I was very fond of. Cirque du Freak. You know, I come from that little time, I guess, whatever. So that's going to wrap it up. That is it. I'm not going to go back into detail about my projects. They're all pretty much the same. I just need to make time to do everything. So just trust and believe in the process. I'll keep recording my drawing because I'm actively working on my animatic in between everything I'm doing. And at the very least, I will record the art and post the art. I'll probably make a few more shorts for you too because y'all seem to really like that. So I will see you next time. Thank you very much for joining me. If you made it to the end, you're the MVP. Oh, we did it. All right, man. I'll see you on the next one.